Okay, so now we're going to try the search on Westlaw. And I'm going to pick for jurisdiction, I'm going to select Ohio. And I don't want all federal, but I do want related federal, so I'm going to pick Ohio and include related federal. There could be some diversity cases in federal courts that address this issue, possibly of a noticeably intoxicated person, causing personal injury damages. So that's my jurisdiction. And so for my search, I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to keep it broad for the moment. And I'm going to do liability of a bar owner for drunk patron. Okay, so you see we have our overview, and it gives us a few cases up front that we might want to look at. It actually gives us, this is the exact statute that we want. The statute in this case would be a good place to start, and also some secondary sources. We are going to start out with secondary sources though, just because secondary sources are a good place to start if you don't know that area of law. They tend to save you time, they summarize the case law for you, etc. So let's click on secondary sources here. Now we notice that this gives us both Ohio sources such as Ohio jurisprudence, your legal encyclopedia, as well as national sources such as American jurisprudence. If you can, stick to sources particular to that state, because that's what we're trying to focus on here. So I'm going to select Ohio from the filters on the side. We see here there is a section from Baldwin's Ohio Practice, Ohio Tort Law. So that seems like it might be on point, so I'm going to take a look at that. We see that it cites to various cases. I can click on the cases cited here in the footnotes and go read them. And I can also look at the table of contents here on the side, and we see that there's cases about tavern keepers, duty of care from various district courts also that we can read about, as well as cases from the Ohio Supreme Court. So another thing that I can do is I can search particular chapters in here. I could search this whole, back out and search this whole book if I wanted to by clicking on View Full Table of Contents. Under Miscellaneous Torts, I'm going to search on this whole chapter, Intoxicating Liquors, and say if I wanted to focus on proximate cause, I could put that in. And I'm putting it in quotes to get the exact phrase, proximate cause. I could do it as natural language. It would probably come up with maybe some stuff further on in the results that are not as relevant. You notice it's ranked by relevance here, although you could sort these by other things, date, most cited, etc. Okay, so here we get some sections that might help us out here that are on point to selling or furnishing liquor and proximate cause. And here it cites to the statute that we saw in our full results, Ohio Revised Code 4399.18, that talks specifically about when a permit holder is liable for the acts of an intoxicated patron. So another thing that we could do here is if we return to our list, our search results, I could do that by clicking on history, and I could click just on searches, and here it is, liability of bar owner for drunk patron. And another thing I might want to look at is Ohio jurisprudence. As you recall, Ohio jurisprudence is a legal encyclopedia. It covers a lot of issues in Ohio, even if there's not a specific book. Like in this case, we noticed there was a specific Ohio tort law book. Even if there wasn't, Ohio jurisprudence covers most legal topics in Ohio. So we see over on the left-hand side, I can narrow specifically by Ohio jurisprudence. So I'm going to click on that and do apply filters. Okay, and if I look at this section 425 here, that specifically has to do with an Ohio jurisprudence article about intoxicating liquors. Tells me a lot of what I want to know. And here it's talking about, first it's talking about injuries that happen on the premises, in the bar itself. Maybe a drunk person starts a bar fight. But then in the next paragraph, we see here that it is talking about injuries that occur off-site and what the requirements for liability are for that. So it says here, a person has a cause of action against a permit holder or an employee of a permit holder for personal injury, death, or property damage caused by the negligent actions of an intoxicated person occurring off the premises or away from a parking lot under the permit holder's control, only when a noticeably intoxicated person is served in violation of Revised Code 4301.22b, or a minor is served in violation of Revised Code 4301.69. And so we see the footnote for that. It gives us Revised Code 4399.18. So at this point we're going to go ahead and go over and look at that statute. But we also see that Ohio jurisprudence, like the Baldwin's Ohio Tort Book, cites to various cases that we want to look at. And, you know, a good thing to do is go through and, of course, and read the statute. It says here pretty much what I read in the Ohio jurisprudence article. The permit holder or employee of the permit holder has to knowingly sell the intoxicating beverage either to a noticeably intoxicated person or a minor, and the person's intoxication has to proximately cause the injury. So we notice a couple of things here. As we do a little bit of research, kind of other issues or sub-issues come up, and additional search terms come up that we might want to modify our search by. First of all, we notice that the permit holder has to knowingly sell the intoxicating beverage. Well, what does that mean, knowingly? We might have to look at some cases to see what they mean by knowingly under particular fact situations. So noticeably intoxicated person, what does that mean, noticeably intoxicated? Under what circumstances and facts is somebody noticeably intoxicated? Well, we'll have to look at some cases to figure that out. And proximate cause, we might have to look at some additional cases to determine when the person's intoxication proximately causes the injury, death, or property damage. And that would apply in this case because there's something else that may have caused the damage here, that being the automobile, the car suddenly accelerated, and that could have caused the injury and not so much the negligence or the intoxication of the driver. As you'll recall from first year legal research, good thing to do at this point is to look at our notes of decisions. The notes of decisions, otherwise known as annotations, are summaries of various cases that apply and interpret that statute. So you don't have to look at all the annotations. If you are focused in on what your issue is, you could use this little outline at the top and look at just some of the particular cases. For example, say we want to know, what does this mean, noticeably intoxicated person? I could click on 3 and kind of read through these little case summaries. Okay, so don't forget about these annotations because they can be incredibly useful and helpful. There's many ways to find cases, of course. We noticed that there were cases cited in the secondary sources. There's cases cited under here in notes of decisions. And of course, probably the most obvious way is to do a search within in a case law database itself. So we're going to talk about that for a minute at this point. So what we're going to do is we are going to go back to our history and back to our original search. Okay, and we're going to undo all the filters and we're going to go up here to cases. So we got 51 cases. What we could do at this time, we could just start looking at them. You probably don't want to look at all 51 though. So you can search within results, or you could narrow by various things, of course, over here on the side. You can sometimes narrowing by jurisdiction is helpful because you can narrow by maybe the highest court. You could focus in on whatever particular court of appeals you are in. In this case, we would be the 9th District, so you could use that to possibly limit the search result. And there's other ways too, of course, date, topic, etc. You could also put in additional search terms if you want to focus in on maybe facts that relate to your particular fact pattern, on certain issues, etc. So, for example, here we could type in proximate cause, and recall that when you're on Westlaw, you have to use terms and connectors when you're doing search within results. If you're in the big box, you could do natural language, or you could do terms and connectors. When you're in this box here, it's just terms and connectors. Proximate cause, and we want an automobile accident as opposed to some other type of damage, maybe a bar fight or something like that. We actually want an automobile accident, or at least something that's occurring outside of the premises of the bar. So I'm going to do auto or car or vehicle or off premises. Whoops. Okay, and apply filters. Okay, so I get a number of cases here. Let's look at this Gressman case. That's an Ohio Supreme Court case. And recall that there are headnotes on top of the case. The headnotes do a couple things. They could kind of summarize the key points of law for you, and they tell you what sections of the West Digest are applying to this case. So what you could do is you could click on these digest numbers. You could do cases that cited this headnote as well if you wanted to do that, or you could click on this key number for intoxicating liquors, civil damage laws, grounds of action, proximate cause of injury. So say I wanted more cases on proximate cause, I could click this, and here we go. I could change the jurisdiction if I wanted to, but it's on Ohio State and Federal, and that is what I want. And so I can look at these case summaries and see if I could find some more cases about proximate cause that way. Now, you may not have to use the headnote system at all if you're finding what you need perfectly fine with your, just putting in different terms. But especially if you're not finding what you want doing a term search, this is another way to do it. This is, you need to know all the different methods of legal research, because sometimes you get a problem that's just really difficult, and so you have to know all these different means of attacking the problem. Another thing that you could do, if you did a term search and say you just really weren't getting anything, I could go back to the beginning of Westlaw. I go to Tools, I go to the West key number system, I can pick the topic that I want. In this case, it would be intoxicating liquors, and I could kind of scroll through the outline, and I'm interested in civil liability, and here I can open it up, proximate cause. Here's some cases dealing with proximate cause, and again I can click on this and read some summaries of cases to see if there are cases that I would like to look at. Okay, the last thing I am going to do in our review here of Westlaw, and then I'm going to switch to Lexus. I'm going to go through Lexus a lot faster because a lot of what I have said about Westlaw, of course, pertains to Lexus as well. So at the end, you want to make sure your cases are still good law. So you need to shepherdize or key cite the cases that you want to use. Another thing that this can do is if you key cite or shepherdize something, it can find for you more cases on point, secondary sources on point, etc. So let's demonstrate that. So I'm going to go back to my history and I'm going to pull up the Gressman case. So we notice here that at the top of the case, here in the upper left, it identifies the most negative treatment. We see that this case is from Texas, the negative case. Probably not concerned about it because it is from another state, but you might want to just look at it and kind of see what it says. When you open up this case, if you click on this search term arrow, it will take you to the search term and you can see where that case is cited. Okay, but say I want to look at the whole entire key site. The first thing I probably want to look at is negative treatment, because this is going to show me whether the case is still good law. So we've already looked at the most negative case. It is from Texas. So to see if there's any negative treatment that we're concerned about, we can look at these cases. I mean, this has 6 cases. Do we really need to look at all of them? Well, maybe not. And sometimes there's a lot of negative cases and you really don't want to look at all of them. What you can do is you can look at cases that just are discussing particular headnotes, that deal with particular headnotes. And that's going to narrow it down for you. In this case, it really doesn't, but all right. And these treatments kind of give you some indication of how negative is it. If it's distinguished by, it's usually distinguished on its facts, so that's not that bad of a negative treatment. Limitation of holding recognized by, it's a good idea to pop in, see this case, and see if your facts are similar to whatever the facts are in this case where the holding of a Gressman was limited. Okay, so then the next thing that you might want to do, you probably want to look at the history, see if there's any subsequent history any subsequent negative history. This history really is more important, especially if you're dealing with an appellate court opinion, an intermediate appellate court opinion, because it might say that it was appealed to the state's highest court. Alright, so citing references. Citing references gives you cases that have cited to your case, secondary sources that have cited to and discussed your case, etc. And again, you could narrow these by many different things. You could put in search terms, like say we were only interested in proximate cause. You could put proximate cause in there. If you click on cases or click on secondary, you're going to get even more ways to narrow it here. You can narrow it by the court. You can narrow it by depth of treatment, etc. And you can also reorder these results. Like here, it appears to be ordered by depth of treatment, which is usually what you want, but you could reorder by date. Now, recall too that you could key cite the statute to see if that's still good, if there's another, possibly another statute that was very recently enacted that would change the language of that code section. So you can key cite a statute to get more cases on that statute, just like you can key cite a case to get cases that discuss that case. You can even key cite a law review article. Really what this will lead you to is other law review articles. So if you find one good law review article, say when you're doing your GWR paper, you can find other good law review articles by using key cite or Shepard's.